So this is some double layered metal art I've done, and I'm gonna explain how I connect the two layers. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Some people use 3M tape. Gorilla Glue also makes a tape. It's a double-sided tape. It's really sticky, holds really well. Some people use bolts that they weld to the back, and some people use studs with a stud welder gun. So I recently got a stud welder gun, so that's how I'm doing it now. What I used to do is I would take bolts like this, 1/4 inch bolts. I'd grind off the lettering so it would sit flat on the metal, and then I would tack weld it to the back of the top layer. So if this is the top layer, I'd tack weld it to the top. And then after doing that, you'd have to go grind it because it makes the welds make a, you can see where you welded on the front, so you got to clean that up. With the stud welder, you can't tell, so you don't have to clean it up. So, but it all starts in CAD. When you're doing your design in CAD and you come up with what you want to be as your second layer, in CAD, I place my second layer over my top layer, and then I draw circles where I want the studs to be, and you can see those under here. Those are where the studs or your bolts, or however you want to do it, would go through. And also, you could do it another way is to just take these holes and tack weld the front layer to the back layer. But it all depends on what your finish is going to be. Are you powder coating? Are you painting? What are you finishing? How are you finishing? That will determine which way you should use. I've done them all, but my favorite way was to use these, but now I have a stud welder, I use the stud welder. So yeah, you place the holes where you need them, and keep in mind, if someone wants you to resize the artwork, you have to put it in CAD again, because if you just scale it up, these holes are going to scale up too, and they'll become really big, so you need them to stay the same size. So if you got to change size, you got to go back into CAD. So what I do is I place the lettering, or your second layer, lettering in this case, where it needs to be, exactly where it looks good, where you would like it for your final product. And then I like to take a piece of paper. Before it didn't matter, but now that I have a stud welder and I don't have to retouch it up after welding, I take a piece of paper and a really heavy duty magnet, and I stick the magnet on there. So this prevents the magnet from scuffing up the top layer, my finished layer. And then I flip it over and I grab a Sharpie and I just draw marks in the holes, so it marks on the back of the top layer where you need your studs. And then I just flip it over and I use my stud welder, or if you're using these, grind down those letters if they have them, put them on there. And then what I usually do is I take a couple of these guys here, and I carefully, once I put the bolt on it where I want it. And what I recommend doing if you're doing the bolt method and you don't have a stud welder is to take after you're done doing the circle with the Sharpie, take a straight edge, put the Sharpie right in the middle of the circle that you made, and draw crosshairs. Because the circle's so small, you're not going to see it when you put this on there, so you don't know if you're exactly over the center. So if you make crosshairs, then you can line the crosshairs up with the center of the bolt there, and then the edges, or the peaks of the bolt there, and you know you're right on dead center. That way, when you're done, things line up good, because if they don't line up good, you either got to break off the bolt or you got to drill out your holes bigger if you can. Sometimes you can't because they're too close to the edge and you'll see a hole in the back, so you got to be careful with that. But that's how I hold it in place, because I use a TIG welder and it blows it, and it will blow it off, and it won't be in place if you don't use something heavier to hold it down. And yeah, that's how I do double layered artwork. And like and follow my page for more tips on metal art.